Welcome back to SOUHAN-UNFILTERED.com. I'm Jim Souhan. My guest today, after a little Christmas break, is Mark Craig, my first repeat guest. How about that? My first repeat guest. You know what kind of trophy you get for that?
I'm sort of like Robin Williams for your Johnny Carson, right? Is it?
Except for the fact that I'm nothing like Johnny Carson, you're nothing like Robin Williams. I think it's an exactly apropos analogy.
That's right.
I really like that. Mark is the NFL writer at the Star Tribune, and last time I had Mark on the Alive and Social Network, you got a little list of the language, Mark.
I'm gonna be a little less unfiltered.
It means your mom's in town.
Yeah, I think my mom washed my mouth out with soap. So, I think I'll be a little less unfiltered.
Okay,
you never know, though.
Until we get another beer in you, that is. We are live at Kieran's. It's 5 o'clock on Friday night. We are going live at Kieran's in downtown Minneapolis. We're up on the big stage, being ignored by one and all. It's kind of a weird. Podcasting is a weird thing. You go out and you do it live, but everybody's just kind of going about their business around you. It's not like you're putting on a concert, But two guys up on stage yakking. Evan Davis is running the board. Again, this is SOUHAN-UNFILTERED.com. You can find the podcast at that website. And every Wednesday night, I will be live either at 5 o'clock at Kieran's, where I am tonight. We're doing it Friday instead of Wednesday because of Christmas week, or 5 o'clock Wednesday night at the local. So I'll be at the local next week, 5 o'clock on New Year's Eve. Kieran's also on New Year's Eve will be open. They wanted me to pass this on. They're going to have live music from the St. Dominic's Trio. It's a 5-piece cover band doing classics from Van Morrison, the Beatles, Rolling Stones, and others. There will be no cover charge. They will have an extended happy hour until 10 o'clock, $4.50 drafts, house wines, and rail cocktails, $5.50 big gingers, $2 off select appetizers, free champagne toast at midnight, and on New Year's Day, they are open 11 a.m. until 1 a.m. Obviously, they have all kinds of big screen TVs. They'll have all the games on. My favorite part of Kieran's is the fire pit, the indoor fire pit. I want to have my own portable indoor fire pit.
I like the Titanic room.
The Titanic room?
I've never seen a Titanic room.
It's cheerful. It's all frozen food, right?
On the rocks.
Yeah. So, again, at Kieran's, and now that we've done all the promotional stuff, let's actually talk some football here, Mark. Last time we got to a lot of topics, and we are going to talk about the NFL, the upcoming playoffs, the Vikings, Teddy Bridgewater, all those things. But I realized when we got done with our last podcast that I never really put you on the spot and had you tell me your story about being a Browns fan getting punched by Steelers fans.
Oh, so
yeah, the good one.
Didn't realize you were aware of that.
I think you told me when you were drunk when we were in Tampa.
That could be. Yeah, I think we headed over to the Three Rivers when I was young and stupid.
And for background here, you grew up in Cleveland.
Grew up in Cleveland, yeah, Browns fan. They had gone several years without winning in Pittsburgh. Bart Modell used to think it was a jinx, but turns out they had about 20 more Hall of Famers than the Browns did in the 70s. So we went over there early 80s. And I didn't have any. My brother had his face painted, and the only thing I had was a hat that said, and I'm not going to say it, it said F the Steelers. Okay. And we went to the restroom and came out, and some guy took my hat off and started at my nose and took my nose and my eyes and my hat off, I think. So we being young and stupid, turned around and swung at the first guy that I happened to see. So I fulfilled all your stereotypical NFL fan behavior. Awesome. So and then there was a scrum back and forth, and fortunately we got out of there without getting killed. So that was that's my worst fan experience, I guess.
And how old were you at this point?
Oh, freshman in college.
So what? Okay, when last year?
Stupid.
It was.
I was. I think it was 48. No. I've reached the point where you watch it. You watch it completely sober and employed still, and very much more analytical now than. Yeah,
well, I get how cool it is to go to a visiting stadium and walk in and watch your team. I get it. We see Vikings fans on the road everywhere we go. The F the Steelers hat,
and that was the last I saw of it. I never did get it back.
What went through your mind thinking this would be a good idea?
Well, young and stupid.
I mean, were you hoping somebody would take offense? Or were you just kind of hoping you'd skate through the day?
Probably, but yeah, we're different people at that age.
Yes, we are.
That's why I look at Johnny Manziel a little differently. You tend to grow out of this stuff, so.
somebody can tell you, Mark, that you never played the game, but they can't tell you never got in a fist fight at Three River Stadium.
That's right. I mean, Joe Green.
It's valuable experience.
Doug Deacon, all those guys, they got into fights, so why not us, I guess.
That's awesome. And as an NFL writer, you cover the Vikings, but you also kind of do a lot of our big picture stuff as well at the Star Tribune. Can you still have feelings for a team like the Browns because that's where your roots lie, or do you just look at them as another NFL franchise at the point?
Well, I mean, when there was a little bit of a blip this year when they started out pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
You take more interest because that's, it's the old Jerry Seinfeld thing. That's the laundry I'm used to seeing, and that's what I grew up, had a passion for. But, I can't say that I study them or, really watch their games after they fall out of it. Johnny Manziel added some more interest this year. So, that's a team that I watched the Cavs yesterday, so I'm still a Cleveland guy that likes to watch those games. But, I don't get upset or like the Browns. They've been terrible forever, and it affects my brother. But it doesn't. I'm like, oh well, maybe next year. And so he wants to. He said at one point, he said, I want to wait till the Browns are in the Super Bowl before I go to it. And I said, well, how long are you gonna live? And I said, you're not gonna make it. So he ended up going and actually he went and dressed in a Browns outfit when the Steelers played in Tampa because he's got the home down there. So I was sitting in the press box. I looked across the field, and I could see him in a sea of black and yellow. There's one guy sitting in an orange outfit, and that was him. I said, I don't even need binoculars to see you. So, it's different now. I still like the game. I mean, I'm not a gambler. I don't play fantasy football. I like to watch the game still. So I enjoy the game, but not like your typical fan does.
Well, let's get into the Manziel thing because before the draft, my thought was, okay, I don't think they're going to get a franchise quarterback out of this. I didn't really, I didn't know at that point they actually had taken an interest in Bridgewater and were hoping to land him. I didn't really think that, Bridgewater was a possibility. So my take before the draft was, if you can get Johnny Manziel for sheer entertainment purposes, that would be awesome. As a writer, it would be just a blast to cover Johnny Manziel. And if he ends up being good, great. And I also did think, at that point, I thought he could be a good NFL quarterback. I just saw the magical plays, the use of his feet, the fact that thought his mechanics could be improved by a good coach, that you could take kind of the wild Favrean aspect of Manziel, tame it just enough that he can be a productive NFL player. Then he comes in, and he looks completely lost this year. He looks terrible. And, of course, the instant Twitter reaction is, oh, shoot him, get him off the face of the earth. I still kind of like him. I still kind of like what I see there. I don't know if he's going to be good. I can't honestly say I think he's going to be a good NFL quarterback. There's no evidence yet to support that. But there's still something there. What's your take? You probably paid more attention to him than I did this year.
Well, yeah. I mean, the instantaneous writing off of players, it amazes me. I still think RG3 is going to be a good player.
I agree with you.
He had a really good first year. He got hurt. Second year, I mean, we're in his third year now. We're already saying he's done. He's a bust. Manziel has two starts, gets hurt in the second one. Suddenly it's, I'm glad they drafted Teddy Bridgewater, not this guy. And it's like an instant he's done. Not that I still like Teddy Bridgewater as a pick, but to me it's just there's just no patience whatsoever as far as, guys developing into certain levels. I mean, part of that's because we've seen guys like Russell Wilson, we've seen guys like Andrew Luck who never really took a step back. They just came in and immediately got better and were good as rookies and great in their second, third years, and they win Super Bowls in a hurry. But that's the exception. I mean, most guys are guys who take a little bit of time to develop, and so I still think he'll be a good player. I like the pick because I said they've taken so many quarterbacks. I would hate to see them not take him and be the one you miss on.
Right.
So, I like where they got him, and I think one of the biggest problem with him is going to be staying healthy. He's just a small guy, and he's not afraid to run and throw his body around, and I also like the excitement pick. But we've reached a point in the media where we're so over the top with being excited about a guy that the guy going to Vegas and gambling or doing things in May, we all want to know why isn't he in his playbook, you know. So to me, it's a little bit too much, you know, and I think that can really affect a guy's career, and just to me it wears me out as a you know, because that becomes the media, more of an electronic media story that just drags the rest of us along with it. That would bother me if I had to cover the team.
Yeah, you mentioned RG3, and I always flash back on something I read from Bill Walsh in somebody's book. I can't remember when. And he was talking about the process of selecting Joe Montana. You know, Montana was a good, not great college quarterback. He's kind of skinny. You know, he's very athletic, but he wasn't built like Andrew Luck or anything. He wasn't the kind of athlete Andrew Luck was. No, he was just kind of a skinny guy who made some plays late in games for Notre Dame on a kind of a good but not great Notre Dame team. You know, there's just really nothing that jumped out about him. And Walsh said, I saw him make a couple plays that I thought were exceptional, that I didn't think other people could make. And I thought, I'll take this guy, and it's my job to make him play like that, to make him make those plays. And it's my job to have him not make the plays that lose games. In other words, he saw enough talent that he thought he could work with the guy. And that's what I think about when I see Robert Griffin. Played brilliantly as a rookie. He played great. And he threw the ball well, and yes, he ran the ball well too. He just didn't get, you know, the one thing he didn't do well was get down. You know, he took too many hits. I still look at Robert Griffin and say, the right coach in the right system can get a lot out of it. Now, the one thing he has got to do is stop getting hit the way he gets hit. Because you watch Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson might rush for 1,000 yards and not take a single hard hit.
Complete confidence that he won't get hit.
Yeah.
He amazes me when I watch him. He runs with a feeling that that they can't get me.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, most of the time, he's right.
Yeah, but I think the right coach, right system gets something out of Robert Griffin III, and I see the same thing with Manziel. I mean, there is so much talent there. There's so much playmaking ability there. I think the right coach in the right system succeeds with him. And if he fails, it doesn't necessarily mean that he didn't have it. It might be the wrong circumstances.
Yeah, and the injury, too, could have a big effect on the career and certainly slowing the career down. But, yeah, I just so many people are so quick to write players off after this just a few bumps in the road that it always that amazes me.
Now, the nice thing, if you're a Vikings fan or if you're covering the Vikings right now, is I really do have a lot of faith in Bridgewater. And, you know, just as you can't write off Manziel after 2 games, you can't watch Bridgewater play whatever it's been, 12, 13 games, and say, okay, we know everything there is to be done.
Sure.
I mean, usually the offseason is what determines these guys' career arc, and you don't know what they're going to do in the offseason. But he certainly looks like the safest pick among the old quarterbacks. He's accurate. He's shown he's accurate now, 70% completion percentage in the last 4 games. He has pocket awareness. He's smart. He's studious. His teammates like him. I mean, I think he's going to be a very good quarterback. But at the very least, you say he's probably the best rookie year out of any of the quarterbacks.
Oh, there's no question at all. In fact, to show a sign of his development, I spent a couple of minutes in the locker room with Greg Jennings talking about his 24-yard completion that he had against the Dolphins. When it happened in real time, I thought, boy, that might be the best pass he's had.
Yeah.
In his career to this point, and it was a lot of it. And Greg Jennings was brought up another point that I didn't see. He said that was when we went back to the huddle or the sideline. He said that's what we're looking for, the trust factor. And I went back and looked at the tape, and when there's several things that make it good examples of why Teddy Bridgewater, I think, is going to be he's having a good year now, and I think he's going to progress into something pretty good. One is he had a natural. He slid in the pocket to his right. Steps up. He doesn't step into his throw because the center and the right guard, are in his face a little bit, so he doesn't make a full throw. Like Christian would make great throws, but he always had to have a clean pocket, and which you just don't get a lot. So then he does that, and he also, when he lets go of the ball at the 9-yard line, Greg Jennings is at the 28-yard line. Teddy's throwing it to the 38-yard line outside the numbers. So he threw, as Greg explains, he threw me open, which that's what Aaron Rodgers does. That's what Brett Favre does. Now, that's not to say that Teddy's going to be that good, obviously, but in that one instance, Greg Jennings said it felt like the old times because he saw it, he trusted it, he knew I would be there. There's a man coverage. There's a guy following him. He saw it, he trusted it, and without a hitch, he threw it. and then it's a 24-yard gain on 3rd and 13. So we're seeing those types of plays that even though we said similar things about Christian the first year, first couple of games, we never saw that. We never saw Christian make those throw in a cluttered pocket. We always saw him take off in those situations. And Teddy he stays in there and he's looking for those types of plays.
Yeah, absolutely. I talked to Jerome Felton. Felton was telling me that he played with Cam Newton as a rookie and he played with Matthew Stafford as a rookie, and he thinks that Teddy's better than either of those guys at this stage, and sees the commitment to learning, the development. What impresses me the most is, what I think might be unique about Bridgewater is, I've seen other good rookie quarterbacks. I've seen other guys throw with accuracy. What I'm not sure I've seen before, and I've been racking my brain to try to think of another example of this, I'm not sure I've seen anybody start off hot, go into a slump, and I think the slump was caused by really good defenses, but still, he did take a dip in production, like against Detroit and against Buffalo, and it affected his mechanics. He started getting a little bit under the ball. He lost a little velocity. Some of his misses downfield were wild misses, like in Tampa. He missed people by 20 yards,
Right.
I'm not sure I've seen anybody start well, go into what seemed to be a funk, and just completely fix himself and come out of it as a rookie. You would think that once a rookie starts going downhill, he'd be done.
Yeah, and he's done that in games, too. The Atlanta game was a great game for him, but if you remember, they lost the lead in that game, and it didn't throw him off. Detroit, the first game against Detroit, he throws a terrible interception in the red zone. Comes back the second time they play him. Now, the second time they played him, he was at a point in his development where Norv Turner did a good job of using the 5-wide set with the shotgun and having him make quick decisions, quick reads before the snap, and make quick decisions. So that negated Detroit's pass rush which was a loud Ford Field. Loudest I've heard it, but it's not saying a whole lot. But
it was loud though.
Yeah, it was extremely loud. So you've seen him make progress, and that's another thing that he has that Christian never had. There's no scar tissue on him. It was like when something bad happens to him, he just moves on. Whereas you don't see the shoulders slump down, you don't see the drooping, which is very important for a quarterback to move on.
I had somebody in the Vikings organization tell me something interesting this year. They were saying that because I was kind of asking some behind the scenes questions, and they said, Ponder was always very likable, and he always gave you effort, but they never. And this is retrospect. It's easy to say now, but this is from somebody I trust. Said they never felt like he was a take charge leader. They always thought, okay. Once they got to know him, they thought, here's a guy. His father's rich. He's set up for life no matter what happens. This doesn't have to work out for him. He wants to succeed, but this isn't like a last stop destination for him. He doesn't have to make this work. He has fallbacks. And Teddy the other day on the podium talked about first college graduate from his extended family, growing up in a poor neighborhood. This is everything for him. And I think you might see that in the way they handle difficulties.
Yeah, and his poise, and we say that a lot. It's just a calmness among the chaos. I was talking to a player that we were just talking, and it wasn't for print or anything. It's someone who likes Christian. He said that we said some of the similar things about Christian, but that was more the company line,
right?
Which players do that. You can't really fault them. Well, I appreciate the players that will pull you aside and say, tell you what it's really like instead of giving you those phony quotes. But at that time there were a lot of players saying that, and according to this player, it was more of that was the company line.
I also thought sometimes it was wishful thinking, and here's the thing. I said and wrote nice things about Christian Ponder during 2012 season too, but context is everything. You can go back and say, oh, you said this about that player. Well, but what was the context? The context was Christian was able to move an offense dominated by the running game. He was able to convert third downs that year. He was able to scramble and make some first downs with his legs. Nobody ever said this is a top 10 NFL quarterback. Everybody thought, at best, the people, and this is from the people who liked him, thought this is maybe a middle-rung quarterback who can move this offense the way it's set up now. Bridgewater's completely different. Bridgewater's playing without Adrian Peterson. He's without a running back who defensive sphere, without an offensive line that's functioning at a high level.
And with a receiver that really let the team down this year by not developing, Cordero Patterson.
Yeah, and Jennings, who seems to have lost a half a step. I mean, if Charles Johnson hadn't come along, in fact, when Charles Johnson came along as just a viable, good receiver, that's when Bridgewater's stats went through the roof. So the context is everything. Ponder was succeeded as a game manager for 1 year, and that's what we said about him. Bridgewater is succeeding under difficult circumstances, and looks like, I think, could be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. That's different context.
Yeah, and we should also note that we said some good things about Christian because there were some good things to talk about.
Right.
I mean, that Packers game at the end of the year,
he played well.
He played. Adrian ran for 210 yards, but Christian also made some great throws in that game. And had he not got hurt, who knows? They could have gone to Green Bay and won. But again, when you look at some of the plays that he made in that game, he had great protection.
Yep.
He had everybody focused on the run. I went back for the 2013 opener the first Sunday, and we sat down and I picked out 4 plays, that Christian sat down and watched on film. And I think each one of them that I picked, 3 of the 4, the protection was, about as good as you're going to get in the NFL. So there was like one 65-yard pass to Jarius Wright that was a great throw, but it was a clean pocket. Nobody came near him. So that's the biggest difference between him and Teddy is Teddy can do this without the perfect protection.
Right. I know you've spent some time this year talking to Matt Khalil, and he's been a punching bag, and at times he's deserved to be a punching bag.
Yeah.
What's your view of him, and both as a guy and a player, and does he still have a future here, or is this a dead end we're looking at?
No, well, a lot was said about his knee injury. He's brought it up. The coaches have brought it up. I'm willing to give him a year and say, okay, because guys can't, as much as we just say shake it off, if you have a knee injury and you're trying to play and your performance is affected, okay, then I'll give you, you get this year, and then I want to see what you're doing next year, assuming that that there's no way that knee injury is going to linger into next year. So, I think he was really good as a rookie. I think he was okay second year. I think this year he struggled, but I want to see him when he's healthy. And I also, people don't realize that as much as he struggled, he has the perfect size, quickness. He has all the tools you need to play that position. I just don't see going out and drafting another guy to put in that position. I think that he has what you need to play that position. Someone's got to get it out of him, and he's got to be healthy. Now, if we get to the end of next year and he's having a horrible time, then maybe let's talk about getting a new left tackle. But right now, you're not going to stick Austin Wentworth in there. You're not going to stick Jamarcus Webb, who they ended up having to release, in there. There isn't anybody as good as him physically and quickness-wise, all the talents it takes to play that position. I think you got to ride out a rough time with him and get the most out of him.
I agree with you 100%. And I've had so many people, email me, shout at me on Twitter, whatever. They got to cut Khalil or they got to bench Khalil.
And then what?
Listen, there are a limited number of players available to you, and the guys on the bench almost always, because they're not as good as the guys in front of them. There's no solution here. You have to play Khalil. You have to hope he plays better. And you don't cut him. You don't bench him. You just know that if he doesn't improve from here, then he ain't getting another contract here. But there's no replacement here. And the other thing is, the Vikings, like almost every team in the NFL, got half a dozen holes they're going to be looking to fill every year. If you get rid of Khalil, you're creating yet another hole. You're not moving the team forward. You need this guy to be a player for you.
And frankly, when he plays well or acceptable, you don't get any credit for that.
Right.
I mean, the Miami game, Teddy Bridgewater had 114 passer rating, 2 touchdowns. The interception wasn't his fault.
No.
It bounced off the hands of Matt Asiata. Khalil looked like he played well enough for me, but because he didn't give up 2 sacks, we didn't talk about it.
Right.
And fans didn't talk about him. So there are some good games.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was standing in the locker room today before I talked to Felton about Bridgewater. I'm doing a Bridgewater piece for Sunday. and Spielman, Rick Spielman, the Vikings general manager, walked by to get his plate of food and walked by. And, I've always been cordial with him. Even when I've been hard on him in the paper, I've been cordial with him in person. I said hello, and he said hello, but I just, body language, I wonder if he still is angry about the way he and his organization were treated during the Adrian Peterson thing. I wonder if he's still just kind of not real happy with me and not real happy with us at this point.
Oh, yeah.
Leaving you out of it. Let's just say he's not real happy with me right now.
No, there's a lot of truth to that. I think that, and I don't want to talk about what Rick and I have talked about.
No.
But I do think that some in the organization believe that Adrian being lumped in with Ray Rice, the media just put the two of them together, two different situations, put them together. I think that bothered people in the organization, I think.
Yeah, well, I would argue that it was Roger Goodell who lumped those two together. When the way he handled the Rice thing, the fact that he underpunished Rice and then was forced to overpunish Peterson. To me, that's all on Goodell. And let's face it, you can always blame the media because we're always here to take the beating. But I think if Goodell does his job well, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean he's a popular guy to beat up on. It's a tough job because just when you think you've seen it all, something else comes along. I mean, if you'd have told me that this was going to happen with Adrian Peterson, before it happened, if it said no, there's just no way. And it happens to different degrees. I mean, he makes a mistake. It's a terrible mistake. How do you handle it? I mean, there's no book that's written on how to handle so many different ways that these guys get in trouble.
Right, and I think Goodell, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on Goodell. It's not a lot of fun to talk about. We'll get back to football here, but I think the thing with Goodell was he wanted to be the tough guy. He wanted to punish people for every time they smoked a joint or jaywalked, and he never really thought it out that, if I'm going to punish these guys for this much, and then somebody punches his wife, or there's something much more disgusting that happens, what do I do then? I really don't think he thought it out, and I think he got caught in his own trap.
He wasn't anticipating Josh Gordon getting suspended for the season for smoking pot, and then Ray Rice, the video of Ray Rice coming out, beating up his wife, and so it's not an easy job, but it could probably be handled a lot better.
Yes. Let's go back to football here. And by the way, this is the voice of my guest. That is Mark Craig, NFL writer for the Star Tribune. You can follow him at Mark Craig NFL on Twitter. We are at Kieran's Irish Pub in downtown Minneapolis. You've probably been here, but if you haven't, it's the large Irish bar right across the street from Target Center. It is open. It looks like construction around it, but that's just Block E being rebuilt. Kieran's is still open. It's very festive in here. A lot of Christmas lights. The fire pit. Great selection of beers. I want to let you know what general manager is saying about New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve, live music from St. Dominic's Trio. 5-piece cover band doing the Stones, Van Morrison. No cover charge. Extended happy hour until 10 o'clock. $4.50 drafts, house wines, rail cocktails, $5.50 big gingers, $2 off select appetizers, free champagne toast at midnight, open 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. New Year's Day with all the sports on the big TV. This is SOUHAN-UNFILTERED.com. I'm Jim Souhan. Back to football talk. It's interesting to me that so many Vikings fans are scarred. You talk to a Viking fan. I mean, there's a guy who works in my apartment building. He's a great guy, and he just really cordial. Always wants to say hello. And one time, I brought up the Vikings. Said, I haven't been able to watch them since '98. I mean, here's a guy who just cut them out of his life after Gary Anderson missed the field goal. So you have this scarred fan base, and scarred fan bases. You grew up in Cleveland, and yet, you have a scarred fan base. You have a team that is 6-9. That isn't sending a Pro Bowl player to the Pro Bowl, that lost its star running back, and he might not be back, although who knows. There's so many reasons to be discouraged if you're a Viking fan, and yet I've sensed optimism this year. And I think it's because people like Bridgewater and because people like Zimmer. Have you gotten the same vibe?
Oh, yeah. Those are the two reasons. And as good as Zimmer is, I think it's Teddy first and Zimmer second. I think people like the way that Zimmer plays the aggressive defense, and I think the players like playing that way, and they have some players that are going to make that a very special type of defense, playing that way. Harrison Smith, Xavier Rhodes, Barr when he's healthy.
Everson
Griffin. So you have guys at each level that are, very aggressive, type mentality players who are going to flourish or who are flourishing in that defense. But I really think that coaches only go as far as quarterbacks can take them. I mean, it's a great quarterback and a great coach can win multiple Super Bowls. So, but even a great coach, I think needs at least a good to great quarterback. So I think the excitement is based on Teddy first and Zimmer second.
And let's go off on that tangent here. I've always felt like my favorite coaches of all time, the coaches I admire the most in NFL history, were the guys who could do it with almost any quarterback. Because Bill Walsh is great, but he had Montana and Young, and he was excellent at what he did, but he had the quarterbacks who could run his offense. What really impressed me, covering football in the late 80s, early 90s, was that Bill Parcells could lose Phil Simms and then go win the Super Bowl with Jeff Hostetler. And that Joe Gibbs could win 3 Super Bowls with 3 non-Hall of Fame quarterbacks. That's why Parcells and Gibbs, to me, might still be the 2 best coaches of all time, unless you want to include Belichick. But Belichick has had Brady for all his sort of. So, to me, what Gibbs and Parcells did almost surpasses all other Super Bowl other achievements in the Super Bowl era for me. What's your view of that?
Well, it's hard to disprove something that, like, I go back and I think about what we were just saying about Joe Montana, and to me, Joe Montana wasn't that special coming out of college. Is Joe Montana without Bill Walsh?
Right.
And also, Steve Young, before he went to the 49ers, wasn't Steve Young that we know. So I think when you go round and round about things like that, I end up just saying they're all, pretty good.
Yeah. It's very true. And you never know which is the greater influence, the quarterback on the coach or the coach on the quarterback. I do wish you could have a virtual reality where you play out things parallel and see what happens to Bill Belichick if Tom Brady isn't good. Here you have this, he has a bad reputation because of what happened in Cleveland. Starts coaching in New England. It's obviously he knows what he's doing. All of a sudden the defense gets better, and Drew Bledsoe gets hurt. If Brady ain't ready to play at that point, who knows what happens to Bill Belichick's career? He might end up being a defensive coordinator for somebody.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that Brady, has made him great. But I will say that, that 2007 or 8 season where Brady gets hurt, that first half of the game in Kansas City, Matt Castle comes in. They win 11 games. Now they didn't make the playoffs, but they won 11 games with Matt Castle playing 10 and a half or 15 and a half games. So,
right.
Belichick is very good, but with Brady, he's, top
absolutely
2 or 3 or whatever coaches of all time.
All right, you got the Bears coming in on Sunday, and they're a mess. Who knows what's going to happen with Cutler. Certainly looks like Trestman's going to get fired. I like Trestman. I think he's a really smart guy. But this might be the ultimate example of, and I can't even say he's like a number 2 who was forced to be a number 1 because he won 2 Grey Cup championships. He can be the lead guy in the right circumstances. I almost feel sorry for Trestman that he finally gets his lifelong break. Finally gets to coach an NFL team. And it's
Probably
an NFL
only one, too.
And it's an NFL team with talent, and he has Jay Cutler as his quarterback, so he's going to end up looking like an idiot on the way out.
Well, there's a lot of quarterback killer or coach killers at quarterback, and I think, and I remember saying this whenever they gave him that money, was, man, would you really want to give Jay Cutler that contract? And now you're so saddled by it, and it's going to cost Trestman his job. It's going to cost the GM his job.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to be starting completely over. Now you either have to get rid of Cutler or you got to find a coach that can work with him. Work with all the baggage that he brings as far as just what appears to be difficulty to get along with. You got to kowtow to your quarterback, whereas some of the the great quarterbacks, I don't think you would have to do it as much as a guy who's not a great quarterback. And so you're just your franchise is just so worn down or just held down by this decision to give your future to this quarterback who had only had 1 playoff victory in his career and
right.
who's not really known as the kind of guy that locker rooms follow. So,
right.
yeah, it's just it was a bad decision that's become a horrible decision that's going to cost a lot of people their jobs.
A year ago, I was looking at the division, the NFC North, and thinking, all right, you got Rodgers is the gold standard. The Packers are the best team in the division. The Bears are very interesting because I thought Trustman would do good work with Cutler. Cutler's very talented, and he has two excellent receivers, a great running back, a really good tight end. I thought they were very dangerous. I thought the Lions with Jim Caldwell would be more dangerous because Stafford's very talented. Calvin Johnson, Golden Tate, excellent defensive front. You know, a year ago I was thinking, here the Vikings are trying to drag their way out of mediocrity, and they're in a really tough division with really no guarantee they can be better than any of the three teams. Now you look at it, and I like Zimmer. I like Bridgewater a lot. You know, they're probably either going to get Adrian Peterson back or have some money to spend because of Peterson being gone. The Bears are a mess. The Lions, while they're better than they used to be, I'm still, after watching them last week, I'm still not sure I trust them. And as good as the Packers are, they haven't played very well on the road this year, and there are holes on their roster. So how would you assess the Vikings' chance of like being a playoff team going forward here?
I mean, I just look at the quarterback. I think Aaron Rodgers, you know, when you throw 35, 38 touchdowns and only 3 to 5 interceptions, and you're as good as he is, and the system's been together as long as it has, and there's no signs that, you know, that McCarthy's, you know, young enough. He's going to be coaching a while. Rodgers is going to be playing for a while. I mean, you look at last year when they lost, you know, they became an 8-7-1 team. They won the division because nobody else was even remotely good enough. So, I like the Packers because I don't see any breakup in the McCarthy-Rodgers grouping until he gets hurt or retires, and he could play for 10 more years or whatever it is. So I like them. I like Detroit's physicality, you know, the defense, but how long will that last? I don't know. You know, but I just like how their front seven or front four plays and can really dictate games. I mean, they beat the Packers. If they beat them on this Sunday, then I'm the same way with the Lions. I don't trust them, but if they go to Green Bay and win that game on Sunday, then I have a new trust that I've never had for the Lions.
Yeah, and it's really until last week I thought they were a completely different team. You know, the way they won tough games, they won close games, they beat up the Packers in Detroit. You know, they played physical. They didn't make the stupid mistakes. So I guess what I'm really saying here is it's Stafford maybe I don't trust. Because the interceptions he threw last week were almost embarrassing.
See, I looked at that. You know, that was the Bears game, right?
Yeah.
I look at that game because I picked them to lose because I thought this would be a typical Lions week. They're going to lose the game. I almost looked at it from the opposite point of view and say, okay, the Lions played a typically bad Lions game, but they won the game on the road. So that to me was a sign of progress that they could play like the Lions and come out with a win and get to 11 wins, and now you're playing for the division in Green Bay. They kind of weathered the storm because you see it all the time. I mean, it's the crazy league that I think's become predictable. I mean, the Bills beat the Packers, and I picked them to beat the Packers, and I also picked them to go to Oakland and lose because that is how the NFL works. And so I'd assumed that the Lions would lose that game in Chicago, and they played terrible but won. So I thought that was kind of a step forward for the Lions, actually.
That's interesting. I did not look at it that way, but you're right. They did win the stinking game. Of course, that might have been more because of Jimmy Clausen than anything else. But you're right. I mean, that's the way the league works.
That is exactly how it's like being less bad than your opponent sometimes.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
What do you think is going to happen with Adrian?
I think the Vikings will try to bring him back, but I think that the salary cap will be – it'll be too unwieldy to bring him back at a $15.5 million cap.
Yep.
Under normal circumstances, I think they would have renegotiated that, like a lot of these long-term deals get renegotiated toward the end. Then we'll find out just whether Adrian wants to play here or not. If he wants out, then he'll refuse to negotiate, and then he'll be cut, I think.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And I personally think that's what's going to happen. He's going to stay and be insistent on making what he made before this all happened, and that's just not going to work out. And
see, that's the way I look at it. Is people are still talking about him beating his child with a switch, as if that is still part of this. I don't think that's going to have anything to do with their decision. I think at this point it's going to be a football negotiation, and the Vikings are going to want to take a pay cut, which they probably would have asked him to do anyway, no matter what happened, even if he rushed for 2,000 yards, and he's going to say no.
Yeah, and just some sort of restructuring, and whether it's he makes it up in incentives or whatever. But I think he may just have his eyes set on going somewhere else, and just not want to come back. To me, it's like if they do commit to him and he commits to them, there will be a short-term chaotic situation where it becomes. I don't think that the sponsors will do what they did to the pull the plug on them like they did back during the season. I think there will be enough time as elapsed to where they'll still be like this chaotic situation. But I think just weather that, then a year from now it would be not forgotten, but it certainly would just be in the past.
But yeah, absolutely. I mean, there would be one big press conference,
right,
and everybody would show up for it and ask the tough questions, and then CNN and everybody would fly in, and somebody would try to show off by standing up and yelling at Spielman or whatever. But that would be it. I mean, really, once you're past that, it's like the Prefer thing. The Vikings handled the Prefer thing perfectly this summer. They had one press conference. They made all their players available to talk about it on one day. They turned it into a one-day story, which is what good PR people do. They take bad stories and make them one-day stories, and then it was over. There's really nothing else to say. There's no more questions to ask. Everybody just moves on.
Yeah, I think that to me he's worth it. I mean, I just don't put him in the typical. He'll be 30 years old. He'll be this. He'll be that. What we saw him do after his knee injury, I refuse to put this guy in any kind of box, age-wise, health-wise. Sitting out a year-wise. I think he's worth. Still not that you build your team around. I think you build your team around Teddy now, but the two of them together would be something pretty special, and I think you still try to get a year or two out of him. And I don't know if that's going to him and say, I mean, as great as Adrian is, he's got one playoff win in his career, that Dallas game in 2009. So if he wants to win and he help he could help the team. He could do a lot. He could do a lot from a PR standpoint, from helping his team out financially. If he were to take the normal pay cut that comes in this situation, or renegotiate, restructuring, and getting your money in incentives or down the road or whatever it is, and doing something to make it more realistic that he plays with them, and then finish your career here.
Well, I would like, from a football perspective, I was very hard on Adrian for what he did and how he handled it, but from a football perspective, it'd be great to have him back. I just don't see him accepting any kind of restructuring or pay cut, and I just keep on thinking. Everything points to him ending up with Dallas. Dallas is running DeMarco Murray into the ground. Jerry Jones loves big names. He loves spending money on big names. They're probably going to need a running back next year. They're obviously going to let Murray go after this year, after running him into the ground. Adrian's from Texas. Adrian had the celebrated conversation with Jerry last summer about wanting to play for the Cowboys. To me, I could just see that happening.
Oh, no, there's no question. And the people that say, you should take it easier on Murray because you're exhausting his career. It sounds cruel, but in running backs, would you rather have a great running back for 1 year or an average running back over 2 or 3 years? To me,
great
it's
one for 1 year.
Right. I mean, poor Earl Campbell. Look what happened to him after his career. But for a 3 or 4 year period there he was my favorite NFL player of all time. I mean, just how hard he ran, how much they used him, and what they got out of him. They fell short of the Super Bowl, but that's kind of how you treat, maybe not to that extreme.
Well,
you don't see that anymore, but if you got Adrian, you run him. If you have DeMarco Murray and he's hot, you run him. I mean, look what giving him all those carries has done for Tony Romo. Tony Romo's sneaking up on MVP consideration, deservedly so, based on how he's playing because of that running back. So, I mean, to me, if you get a good running back, you ride him and worry about the carries later. What you want to do is spread the carries out enough so you have them at the end of the year.
Right.
Don't worry about next year.
Right. Absolutely. I had this thought the other day. Bears are coming to town to play in TCF Bank Stadium. Last time that happened in December was 2010. Brett Favre gets his head slammed off the turf, stands on the sideline, rest of the game, never plays again. I was thinking about it today. I was looking back through some Vikings historical notes. What if the Vikings hadn't signed Brett Favre? You think about the last 14 years of Vikings. The Vikings were very competitive throughout the 90s. They go to the 98 championship game. They should have won it. They go to the 2000 championship game and lay an egg, but at least they were good enough to get there. And then they went into a funk starting in 2001. From 2001 to 2014, if they hadn't signed Brett Favre, this would feel like we're covering the Titans or something. I mean, Favre gets them within one play of the Super Bowl in 2009. If it's Tavares Jackson or Gus Frerotte, that's just a team that loses to the Cowboys in the first round of the playoffs. And we might be looking at a team that would have had one playoff victory the last 14 years.
Oh, there's no question. And that's why I think fans as soon as a team is out of the playoff hunt, the fans want you. If you start 0-2, lose the next 14 because then you'll get a good draft pick. The drafts become bigger than the season. And people used to be you drafted to make your season better. Now you play your season to make your draft better. And so, to me, for the last 5 years, if they lose on Sunday, four of the last 5 years will be double-digit losses.
Yeah.
So their first 49 seasons of this franchise, they only had that happen twice. Now you're going to have it twice in 5 years. That's why I just think that you got to win some games. I mean, what Zimmer's done this year has been good. What Teddy's done this year has been good. But if you finish off, how many have they lost in a row now? 2?
Yeah, I think so.
2 or 3. So say you lose your last 3, you get 10 losses. Suddenly the perception of the season isn't as good. People don't feel as good about the team. I just think there's some value in, especially when you have a rookie quarterback and a first-year coach, some value in getting some wins and just having the perception be that you're moving forward.
Well, the other thing about the idea of tanking to get a better draft position, I mean, so many of the Vikings' best draft choices have been guys who have fallen in the draft.
Right.
Adrian fell farther than anybody thought. Percy Harvin fell way farther than anybody thought. Randy Moss fell way farther than anybody thought. Those are Cordero Patterson, I know he didn't have a good year, but they got him at the end of the first round. They got Teddy at the end of the first round. You can get a good player at the bottom of the first round. You don't have to tank to move from 8 to 4.
Right. Oh, there is. I mean, and hats off to the NFL. They've created this second season that's almost overtaken the actual games, because I think people are so into the draft picks, and that once there's a hint that they might not be a good playoff team or they might not advance in the playoffs, just lose them all. So I think if they were to get beat 40-0 on Sunday, sure, yeah, you may move up a spot or 2 in the draft, but suddenly you're going, Teddy's doesn't look so good. Zimmer doesn't look so good. Look what happened in the second half of the Miami game, and then they give up 40 points to the Bears, and it just changes everything, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it also could change things in the locker room, because I'm not a big believer in things carrying from year to year, but I do think that if you put enough bad games together, that the doubt creeps in. Because let's face it, I love Leslie Frazier, but by the time he was gone, that locker room had no trust, more so in his assistants.
Right.
They liked Leslie, they respected Leslie, but I don't think there was a whole lot of people in that room that felt like, okay, this is going to be the coaching staff that's going to turn us around. So, to me, it's important for Zimmer to get some success, and for that locker room to feel better and make progress.
That's right. A few more minutes with Mark Craig, NFL writer for the Star Tribune. This is Jim Souhan. We're here on SOUHAN-UNFILTERED.com. You can find all my podcasts there. We're doing with Michael Russo, Strib hockey writer. Tomorrow from the X, Evan's all excited. Evan gets to go to the hockey rink and do a podcast. Playoffs. Beginning of this season, I said, okay, I know the history. I know that teams don't repeat. I know teams don't regularly go back to the Super Bowl. I know they don't win them back anymore. But I just loved the Seahawks. I just loved the way they did things. I saw a team that wasn't necessarily going to fall off. And even though they did fall off a little bit in the middle of the season, they're back to playing great. I like the Broncos to go back and play him, because I thought, here you have Manning with a better running game and a better defense. How could that go wrong? I feel good about one of those two statements now. I do think the Seahawks are the best team in the NFC. Broncos look very vulnerable. Manning looks very vulnerable. If you had to pick it today, who do you like to go to the Super Bowl?
Oh, I picked the Patriots at the beginning of the year.
That's a good pick.
I just when they were going through their normal, to me, the Patriots kind of have an extended preseason.
Yeah.
So Belichick usually does something like trade Logan Mankins or do something on the eve of the season where the Patriots are done, and then they work their way through it. So this year it got to the point where people, it's the media in Boston, and a lot of people were saying that they should trade Brady and all these crazy things. It's like, have you not watched this team and how they operate? So I like the Patriots, and I do like the Seahawks the way they're playing. The Broncos scare me only because Cincinnati really took it to Manning. I haven't seen Manning under that kind of pressure in a long time, and if whatever they did is going to be tried on them again and again, whether they have the players to do that. But Belichick and other people are going to be doing whatever Cincinnati did to get to him, and because I've never seen it. It's been a long time. Well, other than the Super Bowl, it's been a long time since we've seen Manning in a regular season game. Just be under fire like that.
Yeah, absolutely. You came to Minnesota to cover the Minnesota Golden Gopher football team. What's it like for you to see that team playing in a New Year's Day bowl game, and to see that team probably as popular and celebrated around town as it has been in 30, 40 years?
Well, I think there's a certain toughness to them that we haven't. I mean, the first year I covered 99, it was Tyrone Carter's senior year. That defense was pretty good. I mean, that was Tyrone Carter was like this super little linebacker playing.
He was like Troy Polamalu in the college level.
Yeah, he was, and he was so good at tackling that the only time he left the field, I think, when there was a drive against the Wisconsin, and they had Ron Dane. And that one drive that Tyrone missed, they went right down the field, and they came back in, and I'm sure, I don't know if they won the game or not, but it was a totally different team. So it sort of reminds me of what that 99 team was like as far as a toughness standpoint, but I like what Jerry Kill's done as far as just, they compete. They're just like the Ohio State game. They lost that game, but, the days of Ohio State or someone just, there's going to be certain games like TCU where they get blown out, but I think if, given time, you're not going to see a whole lot of that, just that slapstick Gopher football that we've been accustomed to seeing.
It was, when I got to town, Jim Wacker was the coach, and Wacker's whole stance on being a coach at Minnesota was, well, we can't play with the big boys, so let's just try to air it out. Let's get a quarterback and throw 50 times a game, see what happens. It was basically admitting defeat before he ever started. Mason brought, great toughness and skill to the offensive line. He was great at finding running backs. The passing game and the defense, but the passing game and the defense were constant problems. This is the first time you felt like they're building something not only that is sustainable, but something that could keep getting better as they go on.
Yeah, Glenn was a good coach, and when it came time to part with him, had they progressed or gotten someone as good as him or a little bit better, they'd been wouldn't have had this lull going backwards. But they picked one of the absolute worst hires that you could ever imagine would be Brewster, and they fell for his act, and which is the kind of act that only lasts 1 year. When you have to show all the words you've been saying, you have to actually put them on the field, and then you're a joke. It sets the program way back, and I think that I would assume Kill will stay here. I don't know that a lot of teams would want to invest in with his age and everything. So I would say he would be here for a while, which would be good for the program.
Yeah, you would think he would be here for a long time. All right. Usually wrap up the show with a few different items. I think you might remember this from last time. By the way, this has been Souhan Unfiltered and Mark Craig Very Filtered.
Filtered.
Hasn't cussed once. I just didn't give enough beer.
This is where I got into trouble last time.
Favorite TV show or movie you've seen since we last spoke?
Since we last spoke?
Or just give me one. Just give me something you like.
I think I've only watched like Rudolph and Frosty.
Okay, well, which one do you like better? You got how about this? Favorite Christmas movie?
Favorite Christmas movie? Oh, Christmas Vacation.
Is it?
Oh, my gosh, yes.
See, that's only like fifth on my list. Want to hear my list? Mine is Christmas Story, Elf, Charlie Brown Christmas, the Jimmy Stewart one that I always forget the name of.
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. God, why do I have trouble keeping that in my head? I'm getting like Sid. And then Christmas Vacation is number 5 for me.
Christmas Vacation. We watch it we watch it on Thanksgiving night every year, and my daughters watch it with me, but I say every line before it actually comes. So that's kind of the tradition, is watching me say the lines before they actually get said. So that's my favorite.
Beautiful. I'm going to give you the Kieran's update one more time here. This is SOUHAN-UNFILTERED.com. Find all the podcasts there. Tonight's with Mark Craig. Tomorrow with Mike Russo. Next Wednesday night, 5 o'clock, New Year's Eve at the local. Should be a big crowd that night. Still lining up my guests for that night. So here at Kieran's tomorrow, New Year's Eve, they will have live music from St. Dominic's Trio. It's a 5-piece cover band doing Van Morrison, Beatles, Stones, that kind of stuff, my kind of stuff. No cover charge. Extended happy hour until 10 p.m. $4.50 drafts, $5.50 big gingers, $2 off selected appetizers, free champagne toast at midnight, open 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. New Year's Day, the following day. Now we're actually going to give away a gift card. Now, Evan, how should we do this?
Well, I'll probably have you just stand with this mic and then just announce us.
All righty.
And let them know.
Well, let's do that. Mark, sit tight for a second here.
Just hit the mute button on it. It'll go green.
Just like that?
Just once. Oh, you turn it on. There you go.
Okay. So,
yeah, just right up front here would be just fine.
Everybody, we're doing podcast right here. SOUHAN-UNFILTERED.com. Everyone wants to take 5 o'clock. We're not going to give away a gift card to Kieran's, and we'll do it with some either music or football trivia. I think in honor of Mark Craig, my guest up here, first person to get this